Welcome to Merryfield's Gardening Advisor, brought to you by the experts at Merryfield Garden Center. Join us as we discover beautiful plants, new trends, and exciting ideas for your landscape. So let's get growing together. Merryfield's Gardening Advisor, bringing out the best in your garden.
Good morning, everybody. So glad you could join us this morning here on Merryfield's Gardening Advisor. David is with me today. I'm Debbie, and we've got a great show for you today because we were talking about color last weekend, and so we're going to continue this weekend.
Yeah, and boy, it's all out there, isn't it? Driving and seeing all those cherry blossoms in bloom and the pears and everything's looking gorgeous out there. But today we're going to focus on some of our other favorite plants in the landscape that will be blooming soon, maybe not quite yet. I'm going to spend most of the show talking about both dogwoods, azaleas, and rhododendrons, some of the varieties and selections that are out there, and also some tips and pointers how to care for them and keep them looking healthy and looking their best. So again, those aren't quite in bloom, you know, but I'm kind of giving you the sneak preview now so you can go out, buy them, put them in your landscape, and then over the next week or so as they start to flower, you'll get to enjoy the whole season.
Right. Well, something special is coming up next weekend. It's Easter weekend, and so we've got a little picture to show you from the greenhouse to give you some ideas for some beautiful Easter color.
Exactly, because you know we're talking about all the beautiful color that's happening out in our landscape and the glorious flowering trees and shrubs, but we did not want to overlook all the beauty of the potted plants in our greenhouse.
Do you have that picture up, please?
Right. Now, we have not brought in the Easter lilies yet.
No.
It's a little bit early for that, but they'll be showing up next week. But if you were to walk in there right now, today, you would see a scene like this just loaded up with beautiful hydrangeas and all kinds of just these beautiful potted plants that, you know, if you're out visiting family or you know, just want to share some of the beauty of plants and everything, that's a good opportunity to bring that along. And you brought a few others in just to give a little idea of the type of things you'd find in the greenhouse.
Orchids, hydrangeas, and kalanchoes. Shirley was telling me yesterday that all of a sudden kalanchoes have been very popular for Easter plants.
I don't really associate them with Easter that much, but I think what people are discovering is how long the blooms last and how easy they are to care for and all the bright colors that come out. So I was thinking I had gave one of those to a dental assistant that I was in a dentist appointment. 6 months later, I go back for my checkup. She still has it in bloom.
Great. Well, the nice thing about this, if we can make it, it's triple color on here, which is great.
Yeah.
See if you can see all three colors there. So.
Yeah, but really that can give you weeks and even months of color in there. So
I know. It's
great
wonderful.
For any kind of reason, any time. You can always use that.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we've got a few announcements. Oh, there we go. Sorry. I've got a few announcements to share with you today. Of course, our seminars are continuing, and this weekend it is just at our Gainesville location. But we've got seminars today, a seminar today, and a seminar tomorrow. So today at 10 a.m. at our Gainesville location, How to Be a Successful Gardener with my dad, Bob Warhurst. Now, he's done this several times, and it's a great presentation. So if you have not seen this, take advantage of it. He's got some great tips. You know, he's been in the business for 43 years, and he's got a lot of knowledge there. So do take advantage of that. 10 a.m. at our Gainesville location today. Tomorrow, water gardening. It's starting to be water gardening time. So Craig Takis is going to be talking about everything you need to know about water gardening at 1 p.m. So Sundays are at 1, Saturdays are at 10. So at 1 p.m. tomorrow, again at our Gainesville location. So it's going to be a great seminar. And then next week, the magic of miniature gardens, an introduction to cooking with herbs. Now, we asked on the herbs one, if you could sign up on the website, that would be helpful. Just gives us an idea of how many people are coming, but it's going to be a great, both of them are going to be great seminars. So again, take advantage of that. And one more announcement, the Northern Virginia Bonsai Society is having their bonsai show this weekend at our Fair Oaks location. So you stopped in yesterday, and, well, I stopped in too, but you took some pictures, didn't you?
Just breathtaking specimens in there. I was looking at a couple of fir trees in there that they're estimating to be over 400 years old.
Wow.
That's the first thing that hits you when you step in the door. And then just some other really, really nice examples of bonsai and all the different styles. So
that's great.
It's a local kind of regional show, but I'm telling you, it is just top notch.
Well worth it. Well worth it. So that's today from 9 to 5, open to the public, and tomorrow from 9 to 4. Now they're gonna have demonstrations going on all the time, and of course there are members there to answer your questions. So besides seeing some really unique specimens, you get your questions answered too.
Yeah, and I tell you, the demonstrations are interesting too, watching them, how they actually take these plants. Because they go out in the nursery and they get some plants, some of them are a little beat up and scraggly looking, because that's what they want.
Right.
Something that looks a little old and has character. And watch them, they'll just, with the pruning techniques and wiring techniques, turn into something magnificent.
Great. Okay, I think that's all the announcements.
Good. Well, like I said, I know there's all kinds of pretty things out there in the landscape, but we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the not so pretty stuff. Just kick this off anyway. I've been, Debbie, getting lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of questions about moss out on the lawn. This is an example. This just somebody sent a picture into me, emailed me in, showing me moss showing up in their lawn. Just to get the problem identified and get some guidance on exactly, how to manage this. Well, what happens basically is, moss is a primitive plant. It doesn't really have a root system. It just takes its moisture and it takes its nutrients right off the surface of the ground. You can find moss growing on rocks, on patios, sidewalks, rooftops, almost any environment. In fact, so I took a step out into my yard and took a picture of moss growing in my yard.
There you go.
And this is just moss. You can see it's just growing on rock.
Right.
So the thing is, moss, it just takes the moisture and whatever organic nutrients it can get right off the surface. So what's really happened here is since last year, last year, if you remember, it was raining all the time.
Right.
We probably had over 40 inches of rain last year. Then this winter, with the snow and the rain, it's just been wet now. It feels like for 15, 16 months almost continuously. So what happens when the soil's dense, when the soil's compact, or when you have surfaces that remain wet, for an extended period of time, it's difficult for grass to grow in there because it, of course, has a root system, needs real soil to grow in, but moss, it can just grow right up there on the surface of the ground.
Right.
So that's why everybody is seeing it as really as a function of the weather and the soils and that type of thing. So you have a few choices of what you can do with that. One, as I say, embrace it. I actually, that little bit of moss in my garden, I'm doing everything I can to make it, encourage it, promote it, and protect it, and make it spread. I'm frustrated because I can't
why
get
didn't I think to put that in there?
Growing. Right. But if that's really not your thing, is detracting from your lawn quality, then this moss out is really my preferred product to go out there and kill it. We've been selling this product for years. And essentially, this is put on as a granular, and you get this as a little shaker bag. You can see there it does about 1,200 square feet. We also can buy a 20-pound bag that does about 5,000 square feet. But essentially, you can put that on there, and also it needs best if it gets watered in lightly. And then usually pretty quickly, within a few days, that moss just burns up. It turns brown. Then you go out there, the rake it out, and can go back in and reseed the areas. Now, I have to tell you, though, if the area remains damp, it remains wet, and you have that same environment, the moss will come back. So in the long term, the big scheme of things, if moss is going to be a persistent problem, we have to work on building the soil to enhance the drainage that's there, thinning out the trees to get more sunlight. We got to get the area to dry out a little bit, and sometimes that's a little more involved, takes a little more time. So you got a few different ways that you can go about addressing it. The one thing real quick, and I know I'm around out of time, is there's this kind of thing that people say, hey, if you got moss, you need to apply lime. That's sort of a misconception. Moss can live under pH of 4. Moss can live under pH of 8. So don't rely on that alone. My experience, it's usually actually a drainage problem we're dealing with.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and come back with some beautiful color for your landscape. Welcome back, everybody. It's a wonderful time of year because everything's starting to bloom. I love it. Love it.
And finally, we have this gorgeous weather. It's so nice, like I said, to see our store filled with customers yesterday, because March was kind of a dreary month. So April here is off to a real good start.
Exactly.
Beautiful today, beautiful tomorrow. Great time to get out gardening, coming to the garden center with everything that's going on. But I want to talk a little bit during this segment, talk about dogwoods. Of course, everybody's familiar with dogwoods. They're a native plant. They're a favorite of everybody. Just beautiful in the springtime. But there's a lot of other dogwoods that you may not be familiar with. It's not a large family of plants, but there are several different species. And I put this a little bit in a sequence of bloom. This, believe it or not, is a dogwood. There's nothing there that would tell you that off just by looking at the picture. You know, cornelian cherry. It says nothing to imply dogwood.
Isn't it a cherry?
Yep. The yellow flowers say nothing to imply a dogwood. But this is a very early bloomer. This was actually flowering in March, and it's basically done now. I mean, so it flowers in late March. By the time we get in April, its bloom season is coming to an end. But if you can get a close look at that little inset, that detail of the flower, a lot of the classification of plants is based on the flower types, and if you look at that little tiny yellow flower, you're going to see that flower again and again in the different dogwoods that we look at. So that cornelian cherry is a tough, durable, mid-sized tree. Like I said, it's an Asian species that's out there. When it's done blooming, it opens up into this kind of nice, small to moderate size that's in there. This is again down at American University, showing detail of the size and overall form of the plant, which I think is just excellent on a lot of these smaller properties. And here you can see, again, the little inset, the fruit that it produces, and you start to understand where the name the cornelian cherry comes from. Of course, it's in no way related to a cherry, but it just looks like that. The fruit is edible, though it's very tart, so it's not something people really seek out, other than, you know, you read these things about people making jams and preserves out of it, but I've never come across it. But it's great for wildlife because the birds will come and eat the fruit off of it as well. And I just didn't put it in there, but the bark develops a lot of character and interest as well. So I wanted to give that an opportunity to show off. The Cornus moss or cornelian cherry can be made in small tree, large shrub form, very early spring bloomer with color. You rarely see this used in residential landscapes. But I just keep pushing this out there because we have to get more and more diversity. We have to get more variety of plants in our landscape, and that's one that you might want to think about. So we'll progress from there to the next dogwood, which is one that may be a little more familiar to you. This is our native dogwood, Cornus florida, the flowering dogwood. And again, it might be a little difficult to spot, but if you look at that close-up, that detail on the bloom, the white petals around it, in fact, are called bracts. Those are not petals. Those are modified leaves. So what's happened, if you could get a look at that little small yellow flower in the center, may be hard to spot. You look at that little yellow small flower of the cornelian cherry, you can start to see similarity in these. So that flower is actually very similar. The stature shape of the tree is similar, but of course our flowering dogwood, the Cornus florida, has those beautiful bracts around there. And you know, it's just such a great tree, you know, that great form to it, flower color, leaf color, you know. So there have been a lot of different cultivars or varieties of this develop. So what happens, Cloud 9 is just one example of, it's our native dogwood, but it's a cultivar that's been selected specifically for its prolific blooms. It's really the number of flowers on here that is what makes this such a standout tree. And they're probably going to be flowering in about another week or so. I'm seeing them bud up. Their buds are starting to open, just showing little traces of color out there. So any day now, these dogwoods will be coming to flower. Cherokee Brave is a nice, you might call it a pink or a bicolor. That's showing in our next picture here. So this is cultivar where, again, the center of the flower has that white and then expands out to a blush of pink that's in there. There's red varieties. There's some that have variegated leaves. There's many good ones out there. Plana is a double flowering form of it. So where you see that row of bracts in there, when you look at Plana, with the next picture coming up, you'll actually see it's a double flowered form. So there's all different choices out there. Now the one thing, I'm seeing all the praises of dogwoods, and there's many to say for it, but over the past many years, it's been plagued by some different disease problems as well, which has really been kind of a nuisance and I think taken away a little bit from some of its popularity. You can see there in that top, that's mildew. So when we start getting into the warmer weather, when temperatures start creeping up into the upper 70s, 80s, and it's humid out there, we start to see mildew. The one in the lower picture is one of the beginnings. It was called Discoid destructiva, or sometimes the dogwood anthracnose. That seems to impact the trees during cool, wet weather conditions. So these are a couple things that show up and you might have to manage, but I still love our native dogwood and recommend using it all the time. But because of some of these pest problems that it encounters, hybridization efforts went underway, and they took the Cornus cusa, Asian species, Cornus florida, our native species, hybridized them, and there's also a series that's called stellar dogwoods. And again, that's going to be in our next picture here. There's several varieties of this stellar dogwood. They flower a little bit later. You can see it's a little bit different form to the tree. They're sterile. They don't produce the berries that are on there. But what they do for us is they flower maybe 2 weeks later, so they're going to be flowering probably sometime in May. The Aurora is one that gets big, showy white flowers. Stellar pink is a very popular one. I put that in there because the flowers begin a nice deep pink, but as they expand and they open up, it sort of turns this nice blush pink. So these flower a little bit later. It's a different tree, but the good thing, and they're growing in popularity, is they're tough, durable, and we don't have any of those pest problems with them.
Right.
And then there's one more that I want to show you. It's a different species, and I just had to limit my list because they're limited by time. But this is another native species. It's called the alternate leaf dogwood. Sometimes it's called a pagoda dogwood. Again, when you look at this, to me it always looks more like a viburnum.
Right.
But if you were able to get up close and personal to that flower and look at the structure of the flower, you would start to realize, hey, it is actually dogwood, and it just doesn't appear that way.
Right.
So that's a nice native tree. Also, I rarely see it. You know, the specimens I took pictures of, the ones I was following up, got bulldozed last week. So now I don't even know where any I could find any of them. So I just love to see some of these other plants find their way to the landscape. Great for naturalizing. Great if you're trying to bring birds into the garden, and it gets a nice burgundy, rusty color in the fall as well.
And depending on which variety you get, the bloom time earlier or later.
Oh, you could have dogwoods flowering from March until June if you have the room to plant a variety of them.
Okay. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. One of the all-time favorites, of course, is dogwoods that we just talked about. Something else for spring? Azaleas and rhododendrons.
Right. Natural partner with dogwoods because their bloom times overlap, and I tell you, nothing says spring in the DC area like the dogwoods and the azaleas, and then, of course, the rhododendrons that are out there. So these are just tremendously popular plants. And of course, with the evergreen foliage, the nice growth on it, the just unbelievable range of colors. They're easy to propagate, easy to hybridize. It's no wonder there are so many of them. So this is just, I couldn't even tell you what varieties they are. This is from Peggy's yard. She just was rooting cuttings and collecting them over the years. And they've had a chance to grow, and so these are very mature. I mean, you're looking at azaleas there. They're probably easily 8 feet tall, but they're also probably 40 years old or something to get to that size. So there's just been a countless number of varieties that are out there, and these really are everybody's favorites. Now, again, with azaleas, there are early, mid-season, and late flowering varieties. If you were going to take the time and trouble to get a sequence, you could get flowers really from April all the way till June with those as well. And the rhododendrons, which are in the same genus, they're closely related, those start popping up and blooming about 2 or 3 weeks behind the azaleas that are out there. But just like we were saying with dogwoods, the same thing here is true with azaleas. There's many different types of azaleas. This always solicits questions when this comes into bloom. This is a deciduous azalea. It sheds its leaves during the winter time, but you get these really big, showy clusters of blossoms on it, and they'll come in these oranges, reds, pinks, whites, and yellows in there that's so dramatic. So this, as you can see, it's sort of a tall, leggy plant. That's the natural characteristic of it. You'll see them called Exbury, Mollis. Azaleas, they grow in the same kind of environment as the others, but give you those dramatic colors. And then real quickly, the rhododendrons. This is just give you an idea of the selection that we have available at the garden center. We're probably still 2-3 weeks from when they're going to be really in full bloom like this, but you just come in, there are varieties in heights, sizes, shapes, and everything. Now, azaleas and rhododendrons, they're all in the same family, the same genus. They like that moist but well-drained soil, acidic conditions. They'll grow in full sun, but they do their best sort of half sun, half shade. I brought a few other examples of azaleas in to show you today. They're not flowering. We're just a little bit early in the season for that, but I wanted to look a little bit about some of their characteristics beyond just the flowers that are out there. This is a variety called Johanna right here, and what happens, the leaf turns this very deep burgundy color, especially during the cold weather. So a lot of times we're looking at azaleas and we're just thinking about the 2 weeks they're in bloom, but you can also get a range or variety of leaf color that's in there. Just in front of it, there's also variegated ones. So this has the green and white leaf that's on there. This is a variety, it's called Christie, but there's a few others out there. It will bloom with a red flower. And then, just like we were looking at azaleas that were up to 6 and 8 feet tall, there are ground cover azaleas. So we're looking, again, that's that variegated leaf, but then there's also this ground cover azalea right beside it. The mature height is only going to be about 12-16 inches, but it trails and creeps along the ground. This is a particular one, it's called Joseph Hill, that blossoms with sort of a orangish color that's in there. And then I also brought in one of these Encore azaleas. There's what we call repeat bloomers like Encore, and Bloomathon is another series that's out there. What's different about these is that you have a longer bloom season. Historically, just as we were saying, azaleas, they flower for us maybe for 2 weeks in the spring. Well, what these do is they set their flower buds in late summer like the others do. So in the fall of the year, maybe 25% of those buds open, so you get a little bit of a display in fall. Next spring, most of the other buds open, give you good display in spring, and then that progresses and you get a few sporadic flowers in the summer as well. So rather than blooming all at once, these flowers open over a series of weeks or months, so you get both a spring and a fall bloom and a little bit sometimes during the summer. So that's something that can be fun to play with as well. So that's just to give you a little teaser of what's to come. Now, I did want to talk a little bit about how we can keep our azaleas looking their best and some of the little nuisance things that go on. What you're looking at, this is a picture of a disease. It's called Ovulinia petal blight. It's very, very common. It's very widespread throughout the metro area. So much so that, we almost expect this to see normal. What will happen in your azalea is just at peak bloom, it's looking absolutely glorious, and then right about that time, they start to turn brown and just detracts from the beauty of it. It doesn't really harm the plant. It doesn't kill it. It's just kind of a nuisance pest. And then the other thing that we run into quite frequently is also lacebug. Lacebug is a common insect pest. I'm showing both the top and bottom of the leaf because what happens, the insect actually sits under the leaf, pierces it with its mouth and sucks the sap out of it, which is why it bleaches out and sort of loses its color. When you turn that leaf over, when you look at the underside, you start to see the pest itself, some of their fecal matter that's left behind. That pretty much confirms that that's lacebug that's going on.
Right.
Now, these are pretty easy to control problems. That's what I'm showing. You don't have to live with these things. You have a variety of treatment options. The ones that I want to show you that works really well for me is if you're dealing with that petal blight. This insect disease and mite control from Bayer does a very good job on controlling the petal blight, but it's a matter of getting the proper timing of application. What you want to do is any day now, just as those buds, this guy right here, just as those buds start to show a little bit of color, when they're starting to open up, and this could be in the next week or so, you see a tiny little blush of color in there, that's the appropriate time to go out and spray them with this insect disease and mite control, and that fungicide will protect the blooms from that petal blight and really extend the bloom season. You might get to enjoy your flowers for like 3 weeks rather than the normal 7 to 10 days. Now with those lace bugs, again, the Bayer insect disease and mite control will manage that, but what I really like to use for lace bug is this tree and shrub protect and feed. What's so nice about this is it's easy to use and it's a one-time application. You could mix this up in a watering can, go out there, water your azaleas, and this is a good time of year to do it. You could do that this weekend. You soak this into the root system. It's absorbed up through the roots, in through the whole plant, and that one application will last you for an entire year.
That's great.
Most of my clients only need to do this about once every 2 years, you know, if they have a major problem. We're talking about like 95, 98, 100% control. It does a really, really great job. We can also use this on things like people use with crepe myrtles, keep Japanese beetles and aphids off of them, so it works on a range of pests, but probably the azalea-based lacebug is our #1 use for it.
Well, and it's so nice nowadays that these containers that these insecticides and preventatives come in are so easy to use, like the bag, the sprinkle bag, and the containers.
Oh, it's got to be convenient, you know. But Debbie, we're all busy. None of us have all the hours we'd like to have to work in the garden. So that's why I'm saying I go with this, because it is such a time saver. It's so convenient, and it works wonderfully.
Yeah. Okay, time for another break. We will be right back with more color. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We've been talking about azaleas and rhododendrons, and we've got some things to help you keep them looking great right now.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, Dad, I was a little concerned when I was putting this show together, because, I mean, these are great, wonderful, easy plants to grow, and here I am talking about the insects, the disease, and stuff like that. But I look at it and I feel like, well, part of my bias, because that's what I do day in, day out. So that's, you know, I'm always looking at the problem-solving side of it. But also, I just feel like if you know about this, the more you know about it ahead of time, the better prepared we are making our selections.
Right.
And these are things that you can address, and it's better, I think, if you know right up front what you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
You know, we can give the correct environment, the right plant, and then avoid these problems or know how to address it when they show up. So I am not in any way, shape, or form trying to discourage you from using these plants. I just love them in the landscape. I mean, you see them, there are millions of them throughout the area, so you know they do well. But having qualified all that, let's look at another ugly picture.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Azaleas, you know, azaleas and rhododendrons, like other plants, when we talk about these plants needing an acidic, well-drained soil, what happens is if you take a close look at this picture, there's we call interveinal chlorosis going on. Big name, chlorosis, meaning it's yellowing, but the pattern, when we say interveinal, the veins are staying a dark green, but it's kind of going yellow in between, and that's a result of the plant not getting enough iron. So this is a nutritional problem that's because of insufficient iron. And the reason it's not getting iron is because the soil is not acidic enough.
Gotcha.
So again, that's something that you'll see show up occasionally, can happen, and we can address that. Another very common problem that I encounter, or disease problem that we see, you know, sometimes in azaleas, but more frequently rhododendrons, is a disease. It's called Phytophthora. Phytophthora, I always say it's a Greek word that means plant destroyer. It affects about 1,200 different plant species. It's just some are more susceptible than others. This is what's sometimes called a water mold, or, you know, DNA analysis are showing it's really more closely related to brown algae. And what I was trying to show in that little inset is a close-up of the spores. The spores of this actually even have a little flagella on it, so it's mobile, and it swims and it moves through the moisture that's in the soil. And it will actually has these chemical receptors that if it sees roots that are stressed or something, it can actually move and in and attack. So it's a pretty aggressive pathogen. And what happens a lot of times in our clay soil that's dense, that's heavy, that's not well drained, or we're giving excessive moisture, we run into a lot of problems with that. So what are we going to do if we're encountering those things? Because there are answers to this. First of all, if you're seeing that iron chlorosis show up where your soil is not acidic enough, this is a pretty quick fix. And I just put the Espoma brand up here because it's a nice bag, nice picture, but we sell several others. This is just sulfur. And as we apply sulfur to the soil, it becomes more acidic. The iron that's in there becomes soluble, and the plant's able to absorb and take it up. Now, if I'm having problems with that Phytophthora, that root rot disease that's in there, we really have to address the underlying cause, which is drainage.
Right.
My favorite way of doing that is this permatill. If I am planting in areas that are poorly drained and I am having plants that may be sensitive to that,
right,
then I'm a big fan of this permatill.
It's a big bag, so we didn't bring the full bag.
Yeah, this comes in a 40-pound bag, but they also take the same thing and package this Volblock in a 15-pound bag. But I'm recommending, I'm using this all the time. I think it's the first time I've actually brought it onto the TV show. So I really use this, like I said, if you want to be growing rhododendrons in an area where you've had a history of problems with this, or it's less than exceptional drainage, you want to add that permatill.
Okay.
And I just show a little bit of it in here, if I can. It looks just like gravel. It's excavated down in North Carolina, but they do is they take this stone, they excavate it.
Put your hand up just a little bit.
A little bit more here. We put
tilt it down.
Yeah, spilled everywhere. We put they put it in the kiln, and what happens is it gets when it goes in there, it gets all fractured up like this.
Here.
And you can't really see in there, but there are these tiny little pore spaces in there, almost like lava rock. And I think it's the way it maintains that porosity and aeration around the root zone that makes it so effective. So it looks just like gravel, but it actually has a few special, unique properties.
Right.
So I think like I said, I don't use this every time I'm planting, but if I have a history of that problem, that's a way you can grow rhododendrons, even where maybe you run into that phytophthora.
Well, we're going to go to a break and take your phone calls afterwards, but as we go out, can we see 2 more pretty plants?
Okay. Real quick, because I didn't want to leave everything on an ugly note. So, like I say, we want to hear from you. Give us a phone call. But serviceberry, they're in bloom right now. Again, that's another native in the rose family. That's what the tree looks like. And then I've also got a close-up of the blossom. And it gets its name serviceberry, or sometimes called Juneberry, because you get these lovely, delicious berries on it in June, and you'll love them, the birds will love them, and the whole plant's just pretty all year round.
That's great. So give us a call, 703-387-1046, and we will be right back and love to talk to you. Stay tuned. Question and answer time, 703-387-1046. And David, our first caller is Helen, and she's calling from Newmarket, Maryland. Hi, Helen.
Hello, how are you?
Great.
Good morning.
How about
We're doing
you?
fine.
I'm from the Lake Linganore area in Newmarket, Maryland.
Great.
And my question is there a particular rhododendron hybrid that is more disease resistant? We're getting a lot of this sort of looks like mold on our leaves, the black moldy looking spots and things.
Right. Well, actually, my experience is sort of the opposite of that, saying that I find the native varieties tend to be a little more disease resistant than the hybrids. Now, are you talking about, are these just naturalized rhododendrons, or are they ones that you've purchased and planted?
No, they're ones that I've purchased and planted, and I couldn't tell you what the names of them are now, but if you could point me toward the type of native, names that I should look for.
Well, the native ones, I have to tell you, they tend to be taller, larger shrubs. They're not as dense and compact, and you're limited on your color selection. So that's sort of the limitation that goes with it. But the good news is I do think they're more disease resistant and hardier. So what's sometimes called a rhododendron maximum, or sometimes it's sold under the name of Roseum elegans, is a nice pink variety that's out there. I've had better success with those than I have some of these hybrids. But it does limit your palette of selection, and they do become larger plants.
Oh, I'm not worried about the type of flower. I just want a nice, healthy-looking plant. We have a very shaded lot, and I like that dark evergreen look in the wintertime especially.
Yeah, the one that is probably most widely available, like I said, we call it Roseum elegans, but any of the, sometimes they're unnamed varieties, but it's called just a rhododendron maximum, is a good choice for you.
Okay, how do you spell that? Naturalum?
Maximum, like M-A-X.
Oh, maximum,
yeah, because it's got a little bit larger leaf, and I say it's a bigger, coarser plant than some of these hybrids that are out there. But if you've got the room for them to grow, they'll give you years and years of carefree beauty.
Okay, great. Well, I will look for that, and I can replace quite a few that looks like they didn't make it through the winter.
Yeah, and again, anything you can do to enhance and improve the drainage is always a plus, and I think that's the big key with drainage. With rhododendrons is you have to have good drainage. At the same time, they won't tolerate drought conditions, so you want to make the best drainage you can, but then be prepared to supplement with some water during the dry spells.
Okay, I will do that, and I thank you very much for your information.
All right, you have a good
weekend.
weekend.
We watch the show almost every Saturday.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for calling.
And it's been wonderful. You're quite welcome. Thank you very much again.
Take care. So nice to talk to you. Okay, our next caller is Brenda, who's calling from Chillum, Maryland. You there, Brenda?
Yes.
How are you this morning?
I'm fine. How are the both of you?
All the Marylanders are up early today.
Yeah, right.
All the Virginians in there sleeping.
I have a question concerning azaleas.
Yes? How can I help you?
My azalea had the light green leaves with the dark green veins, and I follow your show, and I tried to find iron sulfate for it.
Right.
I couldn't find that product, so I found something called ironite. So I used that. It's much slower, I guess, than the product you mentioned. But it has come, the leaves have started turning green again, but there's still a lot of yellow in it. Should I continue with the ironite, or just go with hollytone, more hollytone, or just what should I do?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're asking a question, Brenda, because I really like to use iron sulfate, but we can't get it anymore. That's why I'm not promoting it or recommending it on my show. So if I had iron sulfate available, that would be my #1 choice. Since I don't have that available, I'm suggesting just going with a straight sulfur. Ironite will work, but you're exactly what you're saying. It's just going to be a slower process. So, hollytone acidifies the soil. It's got a little bit of iron in it. But if you're still seeing that yellowing in there, I would say you want to continue with iron. If you don't have that available, then your next choice is going to be just applying sulfur. Boy, I was asking some of our distributors and everything. I just can't seem to find iron sulfate any place these days.
Okay. Well, thanks, and I'll continue to watch, and I'll let you know the progress.
Okay.
Super.
Thanks for giving us a call.
Take care. Okay, next caller, Nancy, who's calling from Germantown. Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
How are you this morning?
Good morning.
Fine, thank you.
Good. What's your question?
I have a pyracantha that is espaliered on a brick wall, and it's easily 10 years old, if not more. And this year, it's evergreen, but this year, it's most of it is brown and not many leaves, and it just looks awful. And I'm wondering if an unusually cold winter will kill it, or do you think it'll come back?
Well, I don't think the plant is dead, but you probably are going to see some dieback, and you may have to do some pruning. Pyracantha, I've seen it's been a long time since we've had winter this cold, but in severely cold weather, sometimes I've seen that killed all the way back to the ground, and then it regenerates from the roots. I would tell you right now, today, you can be a little bit patient, give the plant another week or two. I think you're going to start to see some new growth pop out, but it may be from way down at the base of the plant. Once you start to see some evidence of new growth, then you can go back and prune it. And my guess, from what I've seen in past years, this pyracantha, most of that plant, over half of it, may in fact be dead and have to be pruned back. But the plant, will recover even as from down at the base of the plant and suckering from the lower part in the roots. And then it's unfortunate, but you almost start the reconstruction process. But you say you've had it for 10 years. We had the coldest winter in 20 years, so this happens sometimes.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a total loss.
And one other quick question. I have the Roseum elegans, and there are large portions of the plant that are brown and the leaves, all curled in and dry. Do I prune those out?
I'm going to say yes, because that disease I was talking about, well, rhododendrons, they get Phytophthora, they get Boschisphaeria, they get borers. There's a few different things that can cause that, but basically the answer to all of that is to cut out the parts that are infected. So those parts that are drooping and wilting and drying up, I would just, as I say, amputate those, cut them off, and prevent that from spreading any further.
Okay, great.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and come back with more of your phone calls. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back and taking your phone calls. Valerie is calling from Sterling, Virginia. Hi, Valerie. How are you?
I'm fine. Good morning.
Good
How are
morning.
you?
Good morning.
Great.
We're having a great time.
Yeah. I had two quick questions. One, I'd like to put a fig tree in my backyard, and I don't like my sister's got one that's like 30 feet tall. I want one that I can pick almost everywhere rather than ladders and stuff.
Right. Now we sell several different varieties. I think we probably have like 5 to 7 different varieties of figs available. I quite honestly, I don't know enough about them to know if there's much difference in their height or stature. They're pretty easy to manage the overall size just by pruning. My guess is your sister has a variety called brown turkey. That's the most popular one, and it does grow quite large. But a couple of others that you might want to consider looking at, there's what's called Chicago Hardy, which is grown because it's the most cold tolerant of them. And there's also one that's called Celeste, which is really popular, but the figs on Celeste are also quite small. It's a small green fig. But all I can really tell you is come in to, there might be a compact variety I'm just not familiar with. And we can get you a nice fig for your environment, but you may end up having to do a little bit of pruning to manage its size.
Okay.
Brown turkey, which is an excellent fig, but that's the big one, and you may want to avoid using that one just because of the size of the plant.
Yep. Okay, that's good. Now, second question. I bought 2 gardenia trees last year, put them in containers and had them out, on either side of the front door. Looked great. I brought them in for the winter, and I had them in. The only window that I had was a south-facing window, but there's a porch there, so it wasn't great sun, but I did get a lot of buds, and I did actually get rewarded with one bloom that just made the house smell great.
Yeah, they're
wonderful. The problem
wonderful.
now is the leaves are turning black and dropping, and it got leggy on me. And the buds that I had a ton of buds, but I only got one bloom to come. So the buds are turning black at the base and falling over and not doing anything at that point.
Yeah. Well, Valerie, gardenias, that's a temperamental plant. The thing I suggest you do is just hang in there a couple more weeks, just try to survive type of mentality. But then when we get into May, probably even like the 1st of May, you can probably take that back outdoors. Gardenias, like I said, they're a little fussy on their watering. They want to be moist, not wet, not dry. They need to have bright light. They like high humidity. All conditions are difficult to recreate indoors. But when you get it outside onto your porch or patio in the warmth and the humidity, brighter sunlight, they just flourish. So what I think is, I don't know that you necessarily have a disease problem. One of the things I first would look into is the monitoring the moisture. It should feel like a damp sponge. They'll do that. The leaves will turn black and the buds will drop in a heartbeat if it's a little on the wet side. So that's one of the first things that I'm concerned with. But, we're almost there. We're almost to May, and I think when you get it back outdoors, you can prune it back, you can fertilize it, and reinvigorate that plant. And a month from now, it could be forming new buds.
Okay, and what kind of fertilizer should I put on it?
Muracid is a real popular one because it does like the acidic soil, but you can also put a little bit of bloom booster in there now and then if you want to do that, try to promote more flowering. But the big thing that they're going to be fussy about is their watering, trying to find that moist but well-drained condition.
Right.
Okay, now I did put some
Okay, I think we're on to our next caller.
Sorry, we couldn't hear you. Okay, our next caller is Diane, who's calling from La Plata. You there, Diane?
Yes, I am.
Great. How are you this morning?
I'm good.
Good. What can we do for you?
I'm trying to grow dogwood trees. We've purchased 2 in the last 2 years that we've lived here. Mm-hmm. We're looking for dogwood variety that will tolerate direct sunlight all day. We have direct sunlight all day. It's a new development, and all the trees were removed. So we're trying to put trees back.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you a few things to think about. One is, if it's going out in that kind of a harsh environment, some of the hybrid dogwoods from the Stellar series were called Stellar dogwoods. That would be things like Aurora, Constellation, the Stellar Pink, or some of the names you'll see out there. They probably tolerate the hot, dry environment better than our native dogwood does. There's also a Kusa dogwood, which blooms even later. It's an Asian species that just thrives out there in full sun. But they are different plants. I mean, they have different blooms, different bloom seasons. They're both dogwoods, but a little different.
We have one of those. Actually, we had two. One survived, one died. The other thing is, the soil is clay. It has a lot of clay in the soil.
Right, because it may not be just the sun. It could be the plant itself, the condition it was in when you purchased it. It can also be the planting, the watering. Those are the kind of things we'll be talking about, how to be a successful gardener class, if you can make it there. But, yeah, our clay soil, there's even controversy about this in the industry, but I think you have to take the clay, you have to break it up and mix a little bit of compost in there to improve the structure of it. And the other thing is they are sensitive. You got to make sure it's planted at the same level as it was in the nursery. Don't let it set low in the ground. Right. But if you go to one of those Stellar dogwoods, they've been very reliable.
Yeah. Diane, I apologize. We've totally run out of time. Thank you so much for the call. Have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, David, for this great opportunity to share these wonderful plants with everyone. As David mentioned, the seminar today at our Gainesville location. I'll get it. Gainesville location today, Gainesville location tomorrow. Great seminars next week. We'll be talking about getting started with container gardening. Have a great week.